pieces of drama for you today. First and foremost, in my email box this morning, I got a little virtual flyer making sure that I, as a pastor, am able to get my congregation to support the national headquarters of the Missouri Synod with a Giving Sunday just for the Missouri Synod set apart. As if there aren't enough hands in every cookie jar out there, because Synod doesn't actually support any of its many ministries financially, and so all those ministries have to have their own Sundays to ask for things, thus taking away the Lord's Day. On top of that, the whole theme of this year's series is one people sharing the love of Christ, only I don't see Christ. Where's Christ? I see a bird. What is it about Pentecostal and charismatic imagery that is so appealing to uneducated Lutherans? There is this history that pietism always does lead to rationalism, which opens the door to charismaticism. To Schwärmerism opens the door to believing that somehow the Spirit is active somewhere other than the words about the death and resurrection of Christ. But really, I'm just so tired. If we want to be Methodist with the Methodist cross, we should just be Methodist. If not, let's proclaim Christ on the Lord's Day and trust that His work will, in fact, bring in whatever funds are needed. Had a question this week from Matthew. He writes and asks about something he's experienced on college campuses about people who want to say that they're spiritual but not religious. And he's really put his finger on a key issue here. In young adult postmodern culture, people who say this, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious, they think they're being very original when they say this. They think they're thinking on their own and coming up with a really profound distinction about how they're improving over, say, previous versions of religion. In a real technical sense, there is no difference between spirituality or religion. The words don't, in and of themselves, mean what the people are trying to say is different. There is something that we can understand that's going on in the culture, which these words point to. When people say, I'm spiritual, what they mean is that they have something that privately they believe and practice, even religiously. It is what they consider their religion, but it is private. It is entirely theirs. They don't expect anyone else to necessarily agree with it or do it, although everyone really ought to affirm it. What they don't like, what they point to as religion, is something which is public. That is, it's something that more than one person believe, teach, confess, and practice. This they see, for whatever reason, as hypocritical, false, pretentious, external, incomplete. A lot of this has to do with the play-out of the Enlightenment, the triumph of the individual, as it runs headlong into the postmodern era in which truth does not exist, and in which all that can be known must be run through the filter of my own heart experience observations. That being said, a person can then be spiritual about a religion, but religion never is spiritual in and of itself. It is only spiritual insofar as it brings something into it. Now this, at its heart, is very anti-Christian. Any Christian who says, I'm spiritual, not religious, doesn't know what Christianity is. Christianity is about a public confession, an agreement, a consensus, a communion, a participation in the same thing, the death and resurrection of Christ, which we gather around. See, even the word church, ecclesia, gathering, is about public spirituality, that we all receive the same thing, the same words, the same gifts. But Americans don't like that kind of thing, largely because it's a box that contains you. And everything about our culture, our history, our philosophy leads us to believe that authority and structure is bad. Even though this is silly and nobody really can live this way in real life, we still believe it. And so when we go to religion, the one thing that you would think ought to be public and joined and communal, that's the one thing we insist on having being private, internal, all about me. That's what people mean when they say I'm spiritual, not religious. What they mean is I'm worshiping me. They don't think they mean that, but that is what they mean. Their religion is about what they think. Those people who have a religion which is what other people have said we think and you agree upon, they see that as you're not thinking at all, but just kind of dumbly receiving what you've been told to think. And therefore, it's just external, it's false, it's skin deep. The real value of Christianity is that there is no distinction here. Again, as I said at the beginning, spirituality and religion There is no difference between the two. The Christian religion is about receiving the spirituality of Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection, publicly given. We all say, we all confess what we have heard, believed, received, and give forth to others, not because it's false and just purely external, but because in the externality of the gospel, this object of faith outside us, who is the living forever man, who is the Son of God, who died and rose for our sins, we have a religious experience which is spiritual, both in the private sense and in the public sense, and more than that, it is true. It is a worldview which is everlasting. It's a great question. I hope that kind of helped a little bit, get your head around it. I wouldn't say it straight to the face of anyone who comes up and says, well, I'm not spiritual, I'm just religious. What I like to say is, I bet you are religious, because if you brushed your teeth at least 6 times in the last 7 days, you're religious about something. The question is, are you religious about your God, or is your God yourself and you're just trying to look for an excuse to tell yourself that you're good and spiritual when in fact you're not at all, you're just selfish. Again, I don't know that I'd say that to their face. Look for a new Worldview Everlasting podcast to come out sometime this week before I head to that conference in New York. I will not be doing too many of these videos this week. However, I'm trying to get pictures in this one just for you because I've noticed that my ratings are dipping if I don't put the pictures in. So you guys are going to make me do less videos with more pictures. So be it. You called for it. Let me know if you disagree. If you are interested in learning more about the spiritual versus religious thing, I do recommend you check out this book called Soul Searching by Christian Smith, Young Adult Religiosity in America, Moralistic Therapeutic Deism, that private spirituality in which I'm a good person so that God will make me happy. There's also a nice DVD video that comes with it. I have not actually read or watched these yet. I'm looking forward to it. I've heard it talked about a lot, but I know it gets into this very issue of the distinction between the private individual's life and the life of real religion, the church, the gathering, the public giving of gifts to us all in Jesus Christ. God bless.